Welcome. Good morning and welcome to our Sunday school lesson today on Judges 9. For those of you in the sanctuary, we welcome you. For those at home online, we welcome you. The title is The Man Who Would Be King. Now, that's not from the 1975 film The Man Who Would Be King, starring Michael Caine and Sean Connery. Kipling's story about two British officers who go to India and one of whom wants to become king. That's not what it's a great film. I recommend it, The Man Who Would Be King, if you like Sean Connery and Michael Caine. But this is about one of Gideon's sons, Abimelech. So before we unpack chapter 9 of Judges, let's pray. Lord, as we are just about a few days away from Christmas, I just pray you'd watch over us, keep us safe, help us to keep the main thing, as we celebrate on the babe in the manger who become the Christ on the cross. Bless us in this lesson. Help us to understand. Help me to explain. It is my prayer in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, listen, if you like drama, if you like to study on human nature, such as greed, lust for power, deceit, revenge, premeditated murder, intrigue, apathy, being a spectator, or courage by one man, I think Judges 9 has all of that. The story occurs in Shechem, and we'll take a look at that in just a minute. It's an important city. It's a very important city in Jewish history, and that's so important for us as we take a look at what happened to that city. So you're going to take a look at a little map, and we've seen this map before. As I look at this map, Mount Gerizim is on my right, and Mount Ebal is on my left. Smack dab in the middle, in the valley, is the city of Shechem, which has great historical significance. It means in English shoulder, as it lies between two mountains. We talked about those mountains before. That's where Jacob led the people, and they got up on both mountains, and they yelled back and forth God's blessings and God's curses, the Ten Commandments and what have you. So those two mountains also play great historical significance. So there you see the city. Now, Shechem. Another slide will tell you the importance of this particular city. It's a city of promise. It's a city of commitment. It's a city of worship. Unfortunately, it's a city of man's sins. The refuge city, as we'll unpack in just a minute, there were 6. Now, why this big spiel about cities? Well, major cities have histories. Think London, the history there. Think Paris. Think New York City. Think Atlanta, the burning of Atlanta during the Civil War. The Koch Museum, the aquarium, the Braves, and what have you. Every city has some degree of history, including my hometown of Seymour, Indiana. For those of you at home, there were a couple of boos and thumbs down about my hometown. And let's just get this joke out of the way. Yes, in Seymour, you do see more. But let's go to October 6, 1866. Frank, William, Simeon, and John Reno commit the first train robbery in America. Okay? And maybe, just maybe, some historians suggest this inspired Jesse James to do likewise decades later. Seymour is also famous for a graduate of 1970, John Cougar Mellencamp. And if you like Mellencamp's songs, I suggest you beam up, Google, stream, I Was Born in a Small Town, because you will see some sections of Seymour, Indiana. I would like to say, he graduated in 1970, that I'm famous. I graduated in 1960. But unfortunately, I'm not. Okay? In fact, a summer or two ago, we were in Seymour, and I decided I wanted to tour my high school. We were the first graduates of the brand new high school, class of 1960. So I walk into these guarded doors, and the receptionist says, "May I help you?" "Yes, my name is Ron Shepard, class of 1960, first graduates of the brand new high school. I'd like a tour." "Well, let me go talk to the principal." No tour. I said, "You didn't hear me. I'm Ron Shepard, class of 1960. We were the first class to graduate." I'm sorry, you don't have an appointment. I'm kind of like Randy. I thought, you mean I need an appointment to walk through my old high school? She said, for security reasons, yes. That's all I needed. For security reasons, they could not let me walk through the hallowed halls of Seymour High School. And I was good to go. I swallowed my pride, muttered a couple of things under my breath, and walked back to the car. But every town, every city has a history. So let's take a look at Shechem, okay? It's a place of promise. In Genesis chapter 12, Abram stops at the tree of Morah. Morah means teacher. So apparently this was a holy tree to the Canaanites that they would go and worship and pray to seek Baal's guidance for them. It was a promised city by God. It was a Levite city. I had mentioned that. The 12 tribes, when they got the land division, each tribe got some land. The tribe of Levi, from which the priests come, did not. Instead, if you read Numbers chapter 35, they were given 48 cities. Shechem was one of those cities to which you could go. There were 6 refuge cities. Shechem was one. Now keep in mind the importance of that. That means there had to be some priests. There had to be some holy people, and maybe even some rabbis. Because when we take a look at what the Shechemites do, you're going to scratch your head and say, whoa, can't believe that. But let's go on. What was a refuge city? Okay, if you committed an unintended murder, death, manslaughter, and you fled to a refuge city, you could have a trial. If the jury found that the death was by accident, then you stayed in the refuge city during the life of the high priest. Okay? When the high priest died, you were free to go. So if you lived 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you stayed there until he died, then you were free to go back home. But if you left that refuge city while the high priest was still alive, then the family of the deceased, the avengers, could track you down and kill you. So this refuge city is terribly, terribly important. Joseph is buried in Shechem. When the tribes divided, 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south, Shechem was the capital of the northern kingdom. It was a place of commitment. That's where God gave his covenant, and that's where the people pledged to follow the covenant. Twice, Joshua will lead the people to Shechem to get their commitment, to get their blessings, and the people agreed to commit in the city of Shechem. It's a place of worship. Abraham built an altar there, Genesis chapter 12. Jacob the grandson built an altar there, Genesis 33. In Joshua's time, chapter 24, it was a holy city. Sound good so far? But it was a city of sin. There was a tribal chief named Hamor, H-A-M-O-R, and he had a son, Shechem, named after the city. Shechem will rape Jacob's daughter, Dinah. When Jacob's sons find out what had happened, 2 of his sons will slaughter all the men of Shechem, including the mayor, Hamor, and his son, Shechem. So that's the background of this story. So let's unpack it and take a look at what's going on. If you have your Bibles at home, whatever, I'm going to be reading chapter 9, the first 6 verses. Abimelech, son of, I'm going to use Gideon there, went to his mother's brothers. That's important. He's going to go to his uncles. Abimelech, son of Gideon, went to his mother's brothers in Shechem and said to them and to all his mother's clan. Now we're going to find out something important about his mother here, and I'm going to jump ahead just to open the door. Last week we said that Abimelech was born to Gideon's concubine. That's how we ended chapter 8. Concubine. In chapter 9, we're going to find out she was a servant girl Now, I don't know if that makes a difference from concubine, which is kind of like a second-class wife, to a servant girl, but this is his mother, and this is his clan, okay? So he asked all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all 70 of Gideon's sons rule over you, or just one man? Oh, by the way, I am your flesh and blood. He's talking to his mom's family on his mother's side, okay? When the brothers repeated all this to the citizens of Shechem, remember Shechem's religious history, they were inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, well, you know, he is related to us. So they gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal Berith, and Abimelech used it to hire, this is the NIV, reckless scoundrels. Do any of you have a different translation there besides reckless scoundrels in verse 4? Anybody here in the audience? Well, they're hired assassins. They're hired guns, okay? Who became his followers. So he goes to his father's home in Ophrah. It's about 8 miles away, okay? And on one stone murdered his 70 brothers, his 70 half-brothers, the sons of Gideon. But Jotham, the youngest son of Gideon, escaped by hiding. Then all the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo gathered beside the great tree at the pillar at Shechem to crown Abimelech king. He's not king of Israel. He's not king of the 12 tribes. He's just king of these 2 towns. Now I want to ask a question. How could the people in this city with such a great historical, religious importance, how could they turn against Gideon, who had done all these wonderful things for him? How could they do that? Okay? And where'd this money come from? Where'd this money come from the temple? Well, several commentators suggested this. One of the things that you did when you worshiped Baal was you hired prostitutes. And those prostitutes received money at the temple of Baal for their services. In turn, then, the temple priests of Baal taxed these temple prostitutes. Now, if that's true, then this money came from temple prostitution. If that's true, they're using money from the temple to finance these murders. Okay? Makes sense to me. Okay? So he's going to hire some scoundrels. They're going to murder Gideon's sons on a stone. Now, don't overlook that idea of stone, because the sons were killed on a stone, and Abimelech is going to be killed by a stone. That stone's going to come back. But let's pick up with verse 7. Okay? So he's king, and Abimelech is king of 2 small towns. Verse 7, when Jotham was told about this, the coronation, he climbed up on the top of Mount Gerizim, and we saw those 2 mountains. Maybe he found a cave. Maybe he found a big limestone outcrop. Maybe he found some place to stand to yell down to the people in the valley so they could hear him. Maybe the acoustics were such that standing on that little mountaintop, they could hear him. One commentator said this: maybe they were still so drunk from the coronation, they were too drunk to chase him. They could hear him, but they couldn't chase him because they were under the influence from this coronation. I don't know. Anyway, he climbed up on the top of the Mount Gerizim and shouted to them, listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. One day the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves. They said to the olive tree, be our king. But the olive tree answered, should I give up my oil, by which both gods and humans are honored, to hold sway over the trees? Next, the trees said to the fig tree, come and be our king. But the fig tree replied, should I give up my fruit, so good and sweet, to hold sway over the trees? Then the trees said to the vine, come and be our king. But the vine answered, should I give up my wine, which cheers both gods and humans, to hold sway over the trees? Finally, All the trees said to the thorn bush, "Come, be our king." The thorn bush said to the trees, "If you really want to anoint me king over you, come and take refuge in my shade." That's a joke. Thorn bushes don't produce shade. Don't run past that too fast. Come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon. So let's talk about that. Okay? And I think it might be kind of nice to take a look at what Jotham did. Notice he didn't take an army. He went all by himself, to the mountaintop, yelled down, and gave this parable about the bushes and the trees. Now I think it's important to understand what one person did. Was he scared? I bet he was. Would I have been? You better believe it. I think he probably was scared, but he was bold enough to do the right thing at the right time with God's help. So let's take a look at that bramble bush and the shade that it supposedly gives you. Because this bramble bush is going to represent Abimelech. There it is, folks. There is no shade produced for a bramble bush. When you Google bramble bush and you go through that, the only thing it's good for is setting a fire. It's good for lighting a fire. It's good for nothing else. You see how that parable is going to come back to the people of Shechem and to Abimelech who wanted to be king? Because no place in Judges 9 does it say God is ready for a king. He won't be ready for a king for a long time with Samuel. And who was the first king? Saul. Okay? This is not God's doing. This is man's doing. So there's our bramble bush. Okay? So what's going to happen is he's going to use this parable, and he's going to pick up and he's going to conclude the parable, and I'm going to conclude the reading starting in verse 16. Okay? Now this is Jotham yelling down the valley to the people of Shechem. Have you acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech king? Have you been fair to Gideon and his family? No. Have you treated him as he deserves? Remember, my father fought for you and risked his life to rescue you from the hand of Midianites. But today you have revolted against my father's family. You have murdered his 70 sons on a single stone. And you've made Abimelech the son of his female slave over the citizens of Shechem, because he's related to you. So have you acted honorably and in good faith towards Gideon and his family? If you have, then may Abimelech be your joy, and may you be his too. But if you have not, let fire come out from Abimelech and consume you, and the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from you, the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo, and consume Abimelech. In other words, if not, you're going to be destroyed. Okay? So, we're going to summarize the latter part of this chapter because it's a long chapter. 3 years pass. God will stir up. Now, this is where your translations may get tricky. Some translations say controversy. Some translations say God stirs up an evil spirit. So on those commentators that I used that said evil spirit, I read the fine notes. And here's what these commentators suggested. God can even use an evil spirit to accomplish his deeds because he has control over these evil spirits. So whether it was a controversy or an evil spirit, God is going to begin to divide the people of Shechem from Abimelech. We're going to have division. And he's going to seek revenge for the assassination of Gideon's sons. And a new villain emerges. You can read all about him. His name is Gaal, G-A-A-L. He wants to be king. Oh, great. Now we've got two guys in Shechem who want to be king. So Gaal suggests, let's hire some vigilantes and let's set an ambush for Abimelech. And when he comes into town, we'll get him and we'll kill him. And then I'll be king. Somehow Abimelech finds out about this. And so these marauders there in the mountains, they get tired of waiting for Abimelech, and they begin to rob people. They begin to rob innocent people. So what we have a mess. We have a mess. And we have new people on the scene. So we have Gaal, or Gale. He's a kingly wannabe. Okay? We have a man by the name of Zebul. He's the mayor of the city. He's a friend of Abimelech. And he's the one who's going to tell Abimelech about Gaal. Are you following all this? What my notes? I mean, you talk about a mystery. Abimelech is still king. Gaal wants to be king. He's going to plan assassination. Zebul hears about it. Somehow he tells Abimelech of this conspiracy. So I thought to myself, Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie, your mysteries pale in comparison to Judges chapter 9. So the story continues. Abimelech defeats Gaal. Gaal's dead. He attacks and destroys Shechem's army. He's going to destroy the town. He's going to put salt on the field and salt in their wells so they can't use them. And the Bible dictionary says it'll take 150 years for the city of Shechem to be rebuilt. So this town that had great historical significance, great religious significance, a holy city, a city of refuge, has now been destroyed. But you know what? As we'll find out in the end, it was God's plan. It was God's plan. So, as Abimelech attacks Shechem, the people ran. I was social studies, not English, okay? They fled into a tower. That tower may have been on the outskirts of town. We don't know. But what we do know is they fled into that tower. Abimelech sets fire to the tower. Remember we talked about the parable and the bush and the flame? He's going to set fire to this tower, and the Bible says 1,000 men and women will die in that fire. He ain't done. Okay, next he attacks a small village called Thebez, Thebez. This is all in Judges 9. Okay? But this time it's a wee bit different. He leads the attack, and as he's attacking the wall, a woman picks up a millstone. You have a cartoon image of what this might be like. Now, millstones could be anywhere from 18 to 24 inches in diameter. They could weigh anywhere between 10 to 20 pounds. So if this woman was strong and had been lifting weights, it's quite possible she alone lifted that millstone and boom, down on his head. Now I want to stop for just a moment. Folks at home, answer this. Folks in the sanctuary, answer this. Upon what was Gideon's 70 sons murdered? A stone. Upon what falls on Abimelech's head? A stone. There's humor in the Bible, right? I don't know if that's humorous to have your skull crushed. But remember, God is getting revenge on his city of refuge. But Abimelech is not dead. And one of the worst things that can happen is for a soldier, a man of valor, a commander-in-chief, to be killed by a woman. So Abimelech tells his sword bearer, run me through with the sword. And so he does. He kills his commander-in-chief. The battle is over. Abimelech is dead. And Judges 9 says, the people went home. The people went home. So we have a photo here about God repaying the wickedness that Abimelech had done to Gideon, Gideon's reputation, Gideon's son, Gideon family, but he also made the people of Shechem pay for all of their wickedness. For all of their wickedness. Now remember, this was a holy city, steeped in tradition. I'll bet you don't go to Seymour, Indiana and talk bad of John Mellencamp. You could probably go to Seymour, Indiana and talk bad about Ron Shepherd, because he's an antique. Who ever heard of Ron Shepherd? But everybody's heard of John Mellencamp, right? So God is going to get his revenge. So, Ron, okay, what does this mean for us today? What does this mean for us today? So let's apply it. His name is Edmund Burke. He's an Irishman, okay, 1700s, late 1700s. He was a politician, he was in Parliament, he was an author, he was a philosopher. Here's what he said, and here's the crux of the lesson today, I think. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing. So as we continue to look at these photos in our conclusion, Jotham was Gideon's youngest son, but he stood up to Abimelech, I'm having a tough time with these. He stood up to Abe, okay, and the citizens of Shechem for their crimes. But here's my question. Where was their support? Where were the 12 tribes? Where were all those people who rejoiced at Gideon's success against the Midianites? Where was his help? Were they on the sidelines? Were they afraid? Were they apathetic? Did nobody want to get involved? Okay, so as we continue, I'm going to apply this to me. Have I become a spectator in life like those tribes? Do I do nothing when evil seems to triumph? You want to see evil? You want to read evil? Read the newspaper. Listen to the evening news. It's all around us, even in Temple, Georgia, where Margot and I live. It's everywhere. Am I a spectator like those 12 tribes? So let's talk about a group of people as we take a look at this. Do-nothings. Now, back in the 1800s, there was a political party called the Know-Nothings. And they were called the Know-Nothings because when they were asked, what's your platform? Don't know. We know nothing. Seriously. That supposedly is the origin of the political party, Know-Nothings. Google them. As my father-in-law, Lawrence Randall, used to say, Google them, the Know-Nothings. But you know what? There's a bunch of do-nothings in the Bible. Matthew 25, the master is going to go away. He's going to give his 3 servants some money. Take, invest, take, invest. I'm going to be gone. I'll come back. I want to see some profit here. Take and invest. 2 of them do. 1 does nothing. He puts it in the ground. Let's go to Revelation chapter 3. Jesus says to the church of Laodicea, I wish you were hot or cold. You're lukewarm. I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. You're doing nothing. Let's go to Ahab and Jezebel. Several commentators suggest that one of the things that Elijah found so difficult when he was the prophet was the apathy of people who knew right from wrong. Apathy from people who knew the one true God. Apathy from people who did not believe in the prophets of Baal. What did they do? Nothing. And several commentators suggest that gave more credence and authority to Ahab and Jezebel. Let's end with one last do-nothing. On the road to Jerusalem, this poor guy is beaten up, robbed, and thrown into a ditch. A priest walks by, and he does nothing. A Levite walks by, and he does nothing. A nasty, dirty Samaritan, somebody a Jew wasn't even supposed to talk to, is the one who reaches out and becomes a good Samaritan to help out. One person made a difference. Jotham. Go back and read Judges chapter 9 sometime today and see his courage, see his wisdom, see his desire to stand up in the face of overwhelming odds. So here's a question. Ron, do I just go to church? Yeah, I go. Do I just listen to the sermon? I listen to Randy. I sing in the choir. Then go home and do nothing. Do I come to church, listen to the sermon, and go home and do nothing? Do I become a spectator? Am I a spectator in life's battles between good and evil? I got to be honest with you, I think most of my Christian life I have been a spectator for a variety of reasons. And I'm not trying to be falsely humble, I'm just trying to be disgustingly honest. I think most of my life I have been a spectator. Okay? So, let's conclude with this. Ron, I'm only one person. I'm 60, I'm 50, I'm 20, I'm 18. I'm just a new Christian. I'm only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I shall not refuse to do something that I can do. So here's the prayer for me. Here's the prayer for you. Here's the prayer for you folks at home. What is one thing I can do in the new year to stand up for God and His truth? If Jotham could stand up to an entire city and risk his life, with God's help, isn't there something I could do for him and His church? Father God, for the story of Jotham, I thank you. And my prayer, even for the remaining few days of this year and for the new year, may I have the courage, may we have the courage and the backbone and the discernment to know when to stand up, how to stand up, and why to stand up. Let us be led by you to do that. For it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.